literally the second I turn on my camera. What is that sound? What's up, guys? How's it going? It's Kat here. Thank you so much for coming back and joining me. We've got our red on because we are going to be once again discussing Spidey No Way Home, and this review will be one featuring spoilers. I will have a spoiler-free review. It probably isn't as good as this one. Like, I don't even know how to do a non-spoiler review. I tried my best, but this one I will, of course, be going into, you know, all of the good stuff. Without further ado, let's get into it. So many of you know that I hadn't even seen the Andrew Garfield Spider-Man films in the build-up to this one, so I literally binged. I did a rewatch of the Tobey Maguire films and then watched the two Amazing Spider-Man films truly within 36 hours of going to see No Way Home to prepare for what was hopefully going to be the crossover event of the century. And I will say this, I of course went into this as a OG Tobey Maguire Spider-Man stan. I have a bias towards those ones. Those are some of like the best superhero movies ever, but I say that as somebody who grew up with them. So, and frankly, when the Andrew Garfield ones rolled around, I was like, what? I feel like I have a tough time just adjusting to new versions of an old / familiar superhero, or like recasting of an already existing hero. My brain just has weird thoughts about that, and that's like definitely a me problem, but I corrected that this weekend by finally watching the Andrew Garfield Spider-Man. Should have done it sooner. I have regrets. It's fine. But anyway, that's kind of a reason I had very cautious trepidation. Is that the right word? I very cautiously went into this film knowing how I feel about seeing different versions of the same hero existing at once, and I didn't know how that was gonna go down. So yes, I cautiously went into this thinking, well, one, what if they faked us out? What if all of these months of hype and speculation were for freaking nothing? Because as some of you guys know, I have been just very skeptical about all of the rumors. I'm very much like I do not believe rumors or leaks or anything until one, the film comes out and like actual audience members confirm it and leak it on Twitter, or an official or representative or some sort of authoritative figure from a production studio confirms it from their mouth, or until I see it like with my own eyes. Like, you guys know I'm very skeptical about that, so I literally had myself going in here convinced, like, don't get your hopes up because we might not be seeing Tobey Maguire and Andrew Garfield in this film. Anyways, I was cautious for not only that reason, but because I was genuinely like, what is this vibe going to be with all three of them on screen together? Like, how is that gonna feel? Is it gonna feel right? Are they gonna gel together? Like, is it going to be a congruent? I'm just whipping out like all of the vocab today. Is it gonna feel like a congruent vibe? I went into this thinking, how am I supposed to prepare my brain for this? And I really feel like maybe binging them all this closely together and literally going to see No Way Home like 5 minutes after I finished The Amazing Spider-Man 2. I feel like that set me up for just like all of the trippiness. My brain was blasted to say the least. Of course, to see Tobey Maguire and Andrew Garfield coming out on stage. No, on screen. Like, honestly, it was equivalent to, if not even more like trippy and just like, is this real life, as seeing Luke in the Mandalorian finale, like season 2. Like, that moment was equivalent to this, but honestly I feel like this was even more heightened because it's a movie theater experience. Everyone's cheering, everyone's freaking out, but this especially, it was just like, no, this isn't real. This isn't real life. This isn't gonna exist when I walk out of the theater. This is only happening now, and as soon as this ends, it's done. It's over, and this is not a real thing, and this is a simulation, and we're actually living in the Matrix. Like, that's the train of thought that my brain was going through. To see that happen, like, it still doesn't feel real. Like, I need to go back and see it again to make sure that I wasn't just like living in a fantasy dream, you know? Regardless of which one is your favorite or which one you grew up with, like, knowing you're all seeing your hero on screen, like, after months and months of speculation and wondering if it's even going to happen, that was like, I think honestly one of the best movie theater like moments ever. The entire remainder from that point on, I was just thinking, is this even happening? Like, this is not a simulation. Is it like, this is real life? Like, this isn't gonna disappear. And I also was just so glad, especially because I really was preparing myself for like, okay, maybe Tobey Maguire and Andrew Garfield will be appearing in this film. It's gonna be for like 5 minutes at the end during the final boss fight, you know? Like, I was fully expecting that they were just gonna show up at the end to help Tom Holland's Peter Parker save the day, but this was a pleasant surprise. Like, they were full-blown, like, in this movie, like, all having quality conversations that I really was not anticipating we were gonna get. Those were the highlights of the film. The three of them, like, talking about their respective universes and exchanging lessons with each other and just seeing the dynamics and the new, like, facets that they each bring to the character of Spider-Man, but they're all They handled it like so well. The scenes with all three Spider-Men were handled with such care, I feel like. It was amazing to see what they each bring differently to the character and how that relates to their respective films. Like, what we love about the Andrew Garfield franchise versus what we love about the OG Tobey Maguire versus what we love about Tom Holland's Spider-Man. It wasn't a sense of competition amongst them. It was a sense of look how all three of them embody this character. Look what all of them have done to flesh out this character that we all love, that this legend. This feeling felt so right, thinking we all might have a different favorite in this trio right now, but that one does not negate the other. I think that was like the most rewarding experience of this film, knowing all three of these universes can exist. A new Spider-Man isn't going to replace the pre-existing favorite, and I think for me, as I explained, having difficulty accepting alternate versions of the same hero, like, that was an especially awesome experience. Am I even explaining this right? I told myself I was going to be concise for this review, and I've already been talking for 15 minutes, so I'm going to shut up and keep going. Overall, I think that this film was so spectacular because it brought Tom Holland's Spider-Man into the arena with Tobey Maguire and Andrew Garfield's Spider-Man in regards to the loss and the kind of learning from his experiences and his trials and tribulations that those two had to face in their respective franchises. We never really see like the origin story for Tom Holland's Peter Parker, but in a way, like, this film felt like his origin story. Homecoming was him like getting his feet wet, testing out his powers, his new role in society as like this hero, getting it together, like figuring it out as a kid still in high school, like on top of other teenager hormone issues. Far From Home had new challenges now, having to navigate without his father figure. Iron Man, Tony Stark, and him really having to mature in that sense without his kind of guardian, you know, figure there, and getting the hang of things on his own, having to think for himself. And this one felt very much like the culmination of those two, and this is it. This is him coming of age and becoming the full-fledged Spider-Man who has to face real world, dire, intense conflict. And we finally got to see the aspect that we see in Andrew Garfield and Tobey Maguire's Spider-Man, which is the struggle to keep going despite public outcry, public scrutiny. I would say that Tom Holland's Spider-Man has kind of lived in the glory of the Avengers, and he's had that luxury of the group mentality, except for Civil War. And even though the Avengers received criticism, they received it as like a group unit, you know? It's not like they were being attacked as one person. Whereas Tobey Maguire and Peter Parker's Spider-Man do operate alone. Like, if they're taking criticism from the Daily Bugle or like the public or the police, they have to handle that weight on their own shoulders and just keep soldiering on regardless. Whereas Tom Holland, I feel like, has always had the Avengers group mentality. They still had each other's backs, again, except for when they were fighting, but even still a little bit then, right? Like, they always were gonna be there for each other. Tobey Maguire and Andrew Garfield's Spider-Man were burdened by the secrecy of their role. They, again, were on their own, and this is the first film, I feel like, that we see Tom Holland epitomizing that token characteristic of Spider-Man, and that, to me, is what is the unifying thread of Spider-Man, regardless of the actor portraying him. It's that he is just a kid, he is burdened with this secret, and he does just have to pick himself up and keep going regardless of what people say or feel about him. And unfortunately for Tom Holland, like, it's very sad the process he has to go through in order to get to this point of having to face this task on his own, losing Aunt May, and then the sacrifice he makes at the end there to, you know, forfeit anyone who knows that he exists. That is his origin story. I feel like this is a new starting point for him now, and instead of starting out and coming into this as the decked out Avengers level Spider-Man who's got his squad and Tony Stark his idol, like his role model, this is the bare bones Spider-Man that we see in Tobey Maguire and Andrew Garfield now. And after seeing the film and thinking about the title, like No Way Home, and realizing like the meaning behind that, like everybody gets to go home except for Tom Holland's like Peter Parker. And I say home in terms of, yes, he is still in his universe, but with who? He doesn't have anyone. Like, he is genuinely alone, and this was the dark turn, like, I feel like that this film took, him losing Aunt May and then having to make that incredibly grown-up decision to say, this is my responsibility and I'm going to make this sacrifice, like, is what I wasn't expecting from this film, but what makes it a coming of age for his Spider-Man. He leaves himself with no one in order to prevent utter chaos, and so by the end of it, he is, yes, existing in his familiar universe, but is it still the same? It's not the same home for him. He doesn't have anyone, and it's actually really sad, like, thinking about this. He doesn't have anything that made his life familiar, that made his universe feel like home. Everybody gets to go home except for, like, his home is not his home anymore. But that, I feel like, was unfortunately a pivotal, you know, aspect of his journey as a character here, because he really aged up like a sim. I feel like he went from being a teenager now to an adult and stripped of, again, the grandeur of the Avengers, the Stark Industries suit, his gadgets, the fame and glory that comes with that, and he just has been stripped of all that and boiled back down to the true essence of Spider-Man, which is just a kid from Queens building his own latex suit at home, listening to police radio and responding to the call from help. And that is what I loved about this film. And by bringing in Tobey Maguire and Andrew Garfield's Spider-Man, we could see how all of these stories intertwine, and now Tom Holland's Spidey has joined those two in the true, like, essence of what it means to be this hero. And I'll just say this, I'm really glad that they did not kill off Tobey Maguire's Spider-Man. Oh my god, the fake out of the century. I'm not gonna lie, I would have been so pissed. So pissed if they had done that. I really thought they were going to for a moment, and truly that would have ruined the movie for me, so thank God for that. I would not have emotionally recovered from that. And I'm also glad that they were able to preserve the characteristics of each villain in this film. Obviously, it was great seeing Andrew and Tobey, but seeing their respective antagonists as well in a very non-overwhelming way. I don't know how they did it. They were able to pay homage to each of them. It didn't feel like rushed or like there's too much or like we can't focus enough on any of these villains because it's too many of them. Like, it did not feel like that in any way, which I think is very impressive. And some of my favorite parts of the film was seeing them all in one room, like putting together the pieces and hashing it out, and their banter and them looking at each other and saying, like, you're dead.
And no, you're dead.
Those were some of the most intriguing parts of the film. And I was also happy to see that Norman Osborn, the OG, I loved the homage to, like, the OG in this film, and I loved seeing that he, as the Green Goblin, remained, like, the true antagonist here. I was really hoping that he wasn't gonna get, like, that reversal, or, like, the cure that they kind of did with Doc Ock. He is the Green Goblin. Like, he just has malicious intent. Like, that's just how he is. Like, you can fall for his charm all you want, but deep down, like, that's his nature. And yes, it was, like, nice to see his redemption again, although I would have hoped that moment was going to be a little bit more fleshed out. I kind of wanted to see more, just a little bit more between him and Tobey Maguire's Peter Parker there. Or at least a moment where Norman, when he snaps back into it and realizes what he's done, and yes, he is redeemed, I would have liked to see something with him thinking, where's Harry? Or asking Peter, like, what happened to Harry? Or like, where's my son? Like, that's just one moment I would have liked to see a little bit more fleshed out. I feel like he kind of snapped back into Norman Osborn. That was kind of it. There wasn't much elaboration after that, but I understand that not all of these villains could have a heart-to-heart. But again, for the most part, like, they did an incredible job of handling all of them. Honestly, Jamie Foxx and Andrew Garfield stole the show for me, and that could just be me coming fresh off of watching The Amazing Spider-Man for the first time, but I feel like that's saying something considering I hadn't watched those films, and those two, the protagonist and antagonist, were some of my standout characters in this movie. I think they both did an incredible job, and I just think overall you could really feel in the vibe that everybody participating wanted to be there, and they were all excited about it. At least I'm not speaking for them. I don't know, but that's what I gathered as a fan. And for Tom Holland, I think this is his best performance. He's so good at being emotional, like getting to that emotional, vulnerable place, and he brought that vulnerability to this character here. Like, just watching him age up in this film was like, it was like incredible performance. Seeing where he starts in the film as still this teenager, and really he is like an adult by the end of it, and he hasn't even gone to college yet. Like, that was just an incredibly impressive arc, and I certainly do not think that this is going to be the last that we see of all three of these Spider-Men interacting with each other on screen in one way or another. Overall, No Way Home is 1000% worth the wait, and I'm really thrilled that this film wasn't just about, you know, the crossover event and the hype around that, but that it actually did something for Tom Holland's Spider-Man, if that makes sense. Like, there was a true arc for his character in the midst of all this other excitement that was going on. I think that's really impressive that they were able to still keep this his story while still paying homage to the other two Spider-Men, but Tom Holland's Peter Parker came out of this, I think, feeling just so much more a well-developed and dynamic character, and I think that's really impressive to still keep the core character arc in the midst of everything else that they did, all of the other ambition with this film. Well guys, that is it for my review of Spider-Man No Way Home. I went into this telling myself I was going to be more concise, and now it's been 30 minutes that I've been talking, so let me wrap this up. But yes, let me know what you guys thought of the movie if you have seen it. Thank you guys so much for watching. I really do appreciate it. Hope you guys are doing so well as always, and I will see you guys again very soon. Bye guys.